Operation Status Quo. Operation Status Quo. Prepare to engage. Operation Status Quo. Ready to engage. Operation Status Quo. Engaged. Engaged. Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's another beautiful day here on Operation Status Quo for sure. I'm Pete Palma here with you today on I always want to say that. Operation Status Quo, where of course we observe the status quo, we learn to flow with the status quo, and then we create our own flow of quo, because that's the only way to go. So you know how we always talk here on this program, first and foremost, how important it is to build a space of having a space of realization of things in your life, looking at things in a different perspective, empowering yourself, realizing how much control and all that you have over yourself. And recently, I would say the beginning of this year was turned on to some great information regarding childhood trauma, something I never really thought much about. You know, I've always kind of worked hard in my life to recognize some of my faults and such and work on them. But when I came across this information, it was really amazing of how it kind of brought everything back to a center point. And I feel as a great way for people to reflect on their own lives and see what's going on so that they can learn to resolve some of those issues to be more, find more happiness and abundance in their life. And of course, we have our very special friend of Operation Status Quo. It is our health and wellness guru, my brother and longtime companion, Mike Palma. There he is. Let's bring him up.
Hey, Pete, how you doing?
Good. Brother and longtime companion as well. You're not just a sibling.
I don't know if I want that title.
I know. You're probably better off just saying you're an acquaintance. So,
I like associate.
Say that again?
I like the word associate.
Oh, associate. Yeah, that's nice. So, actually, Mike, of course, as he has turned me on to many things in my life that have helped me on my journey of health and wellness and spirituality and such, Mike came across some of this great information about childhood trauma. And I know, I'm sure you know his name, Patrick's last name, but do you know his last name? Yeah.
Patrick T.
Go ahead. I'll let you turn it over to you and let you just give a little, what's what.
No, childhood trauma is a great topic, and it's one that I just recently got into myself because I had to heal a lot of my own childhood issues. And I think a lot of people don't really get in it until they're in their 40s or their 50s or until they're into the later stages of their life, because at the beginning stages, they don't even realize they have a problem.
Right.
So I think in our culture, we don't really talk about childhood trauma. We just accept that wherever we were raised and who we were brought up with is the way things should be. And we never question the values that we were instilled or how we were taught or the lessons we learned in childhood and how they affect our relationships in the future.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it's like great that you say that. It's unfortunate in a sense because, basically everything, this is the part that when I was trying to open up with here is just the realization of how like everything basically stems from the childhood trauma. Like if that was a realization for people to maybe when they reach a certain age to reflect back, before they move on into their adulthood and, that's actually, start there and you'd be able to, to me, it's almost like the center point and everything kind of, spreads
Correct.
out from it,
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, especially when you're talking about like the mind, body, and spirit and the holistic approach, everybody's so concerned on working on their body and their food and their exercise and those kind of choices. But a lot of people don't really want to delve into their emotions and their past traumas. That's kind of a taboo subject, and one in the health and wellness field that doesn't get enough attention, if you ask me. I think most clients that come to me, they're more concerned with their health and wellness and what they can do to get rid of cancer or fibromyalgia or some type of autoimmune disease, but a lot of them don't realize that even, for example, a lot of being overweight and losing weight just can come through emotions and trauma, because the more times we have worry or we think of negative thoughts, it creates cortisol in our body, which is inflammation, and it causes the body to retain weight. So it's sometimes not even the food choices, which of course are so important, but also our thoughts and our feelings. And if we don't get to the root cause, if we have worry, but if the worry or the anger comes from childhood and we never dealt with that, then we're never going to fix it if we're just dealing with it in what's happening in our daily lives, happening at this moment.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll definitely agree with you as far as the how much the emotional component plays into, again, like what you were alluding to of, people come to you and they're so concerned about, they want to lose weight. I mean, everybody wants to look good, lose weight. It's always just lose weight. And, people forget that, that really losing weight or having a fit body is really a side effect of like living a good life. And I can say for myself, I know like when I started back in the day when we were doing the Holosync, from Centerpoint Institute,
Yep.
When I started doing that meditation thing, I remember that vividly that I just lost like 5-7 pounds like over a couple weeks, like and I didn't do anything differently aside from I was taking that hour every day to do that meditation and how much it relieved me of, yeah.
Right. What you're saying too is when you talk about nutrition is definitely great for detoxing the body. We take in pollutants from the air and from the food, the soil, from the water. So all these different forms, we're definitely taking in pollutants. We need to get rid of them to lose weight. But I would say, like you said, another major portion of it is your emotions. And if at some point in your life you haven't dealt with those issues, you won't be well. And I would say that most people I deal with don't even know that they don't know. They don't know that they have a problem.
Right.
You ever been in an environment or an event or a time when you're with someone and they trigger you, they say something and you react in a certain way, and then you look back on it 5-10 minutes, a day later, and you go, man, why did I act like that? That's not me. That's not who I am. Well, that comes from your childhood trauma. And so what happens is these things it's unconscious. Unconscious means it's below the surface. So if you had an iceberg in water and you see 10% of the iceberg on top, 90% is on the bottom. It's unseen.
Right.
And people don't even know that they don't know. It's unconscious. And that's what, Carl Jung and people who are into psychology, that's what they work on. They work on unraveling the unconscious. And the way that you can know something is unconscious is just like I said earlier, when you react in a way that you're not happy or unaccustomed to, or you say, how did that come to be? That's in your unconscious.
Yes.
What we do most of the time, and what most people do if they're in a relationship, is they blame the other person. And that's why relationships fail, because it's really their own trauma they're dealing with, but yet they put it on, or in psychology, it's called projection. We project it onto someone else and we make them the problem.
Right. So let's just bring it back into like childhood trauma itself, because maybe a lot of people, and for our audience, like to clarify, maybe a lot of people would think, I had a good family and, I was always taken care of, there's the obvious cases of, maybe alcoholic or drug addicted parents that are neglectful, or just narcissistic, crazy people that are physically abusive, mentally abusive, all those things that are, easy to spot in a sense. But a lot of it, which I think is like really amazing, and even more so because those are the easy ones. Those are the obvious cases, but we all have it. And, I just wanted you to speak more towards that of like how subtle it is in certain ways, and that we don't realize what types of behaviors that we don't even realize are childhood traumas.
Yeah, when we're talking about childhood traumas, we're talking about from 0 to maybe 8 to 7 to 6 to 5. Even up to as much as 12 years old. But, if you look back at those times, especially when you were 0 to 5, that's when your brain is the most malleable and it's taking in the most information. And you can't discern between conscious and unconscious, or between something that is a severe threat or not a threat. And so you're very vulnerable to powers of suggestion or just how people act. So you might think that nothing was that big of a deal, but at that age at 5, when we're powerless, you don't realize how much you internalize this information and how much it affects you. So let me give you an example. So you could have maybe had a parent who's very loving and caring, but maybe when it came to your schoolwork, they would say, you're not a good, you don't learn very well. And they, didn't mean it in a mean way, but they threw that on you. Then you take that on and think, I'm not smart. And it's an unconscious thing. And then when it comes to education, you might not reach your full potential, or, that's just one example of that.
Right. And like, how all these things too, play out, that like you were just saying earlier about how they play out into your relationships afterwards. But just not even to go back into relationships, but like just what you just said about school, how that would hinder someone, like someone who is really talented or gifted in a certain way to do something may not, subconsciously just don't even really believe that they have that in them, right? Because they've been conditioned during that time to believe otherwise.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. It's very subtle. I mean, there are things that are said. Parents say things because, parents are parents, they're people, and they get very tired, they get overwhelmed, they have a job, they haven't slept very well. And sometimes they say things, and they love you, but sometimes they say things that are damaging to a child, and they're just not aware of it. And in our culture, we're not aware of it. We kind of just say, suck it up, oh, your parents love you, it's no big deal. I put a roof over your head, I support you. That's enough. We use these kind of key words or terms and to overglance, but unfortunately a child doesn't understand those kind of things at that age. They're very, very subtle, and they're very sensitive and very aware to all these cues. And sometimes the parents are passing down generational trauma, unfortunately, because a lot of times what happens is their parents did that to them. Right. So they're the same thing. So maybe their parents made them feel unworthy, or they made them feel like they were less than, or they were too strict on them, or maybe they were overprotective, and then they pass that on to their child, unfortunately. Yes. And it's done by their actions and by their words, and sometimes just by their behaviors. So for example, if a child makes a mistake, sometimes we spank them or correct them, but at the same time we could just, if a child made a mistake, say broke something, you could just say, oh, it's a great time to get to their level and say, that's okay, these things happen. We don't have to put them in a way that scars them for life, because we don't realize that these little things, such as condemning them at that age, or spanking them, or making them feel less than, what kind of impact that has on them. Because we have to remember, children are children. They're going to make mistakes, but sometimes I feel like parents want a child to be an adult, and so that disempowers them, because a child of 5 or 8 isn't going to have the ability to be responsible like a 25 or a 40-year-old. And I think sometimes we put undue expectations on them, and those type of things definitely can have an impact later on in life. Like I said, they're very subtle.
Right. Especially, again, like, someone, going back to the school example, someone who was conditioned that way, even subtly, might grow up and, want to feel, they have to prove themselves so much, like I'm smart or something like that. Right. So anytime somebody might say something that might not even be as an attack on that person, but makes them feel like, oh, are you trying to say I'm too stupid to do this? You know what I mean? Like, it's subconsciously, right? And that clicks, and all of a sudden you're yelling at this person. And
so if for example, like what you're saying, say a parent told to they made their either said, or but through their actions, or just how they interpret it, made them feel like they were less than or not smart. Then they could be in an adult relationship, say like they're married, and then the husband or wife says something, and then they interpret that as criticism, as that they're stupid. Right. And then they back onto the we've all been in relationships where you'll say something to your spouse or your significant other, and they take it a totally different way than what you've intended, and you don't even understand what they're taling about. I think we've all been. Yeah. And you're experiencing that, it has nothing to do with you, unfortunately. It has to do with their own childhood trauma. And if you were to express that to them at the time, I mean, what's going to happen? They're going to be very reactive, very angry, and they're not going to really want to hear you and say, I take personal responsibility, and oh yeah, that's just my childhood trauma, because most people aren't conscious or aware of it. And so unfortunately, it kind of dominates their life. And I'd say that's why, if you look at the statistics, over 60% of marriages end up in divorce. And I would directly say that these divorces are all a result of unresolved childhood trauma.
Right. And most of the time, and I was kind of speaking to this yesterday a little bit when it was an aside for what I was talking about yesterday, but this kind of thought process came to me, and exactly what I'm saying is, like, no one, most people don't take the time to eat. First of all, they don't even, like you say, they don't even know that there's something to know to, and that's not a criticism. It's just like, it's just the way of our world and how people are programmed, and you don't even have that space. But once a person has that space to be aware that there is something to see, that's a whole nother ball game. You can take your steps. But if you're someone who's just a young adult and you're coming up, and it's like, okay, well, it's time to get married, and you have all these issues and you don't realize, and you're always looking, that person's they're two broken people essentially, or two, whatever, damaged people that need help, right? Or whatever, to heal. And, they're one person's looking to the other. It's almost like, two runners they both got broken legs, hoping that the other one's going to pick them up and help them across the finish line, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would say, especially, people who get involved in their early 20s and, your brain's not even fully developed till you're 25. So the frontal cortex, the part that has reasoning and rationale and ability to control your instincts, isn't even fully developed till 25. So, we get into these relationships when we're young. And like you said, we're not really fully developed people. And if you look in our culture, for example, everything on TV is pushing us to be in a relationship because it's a status symbol. And
Right.
feel important, and it's not that you shouldn't be in one, but I would always advise that you need to focus on you and your issues before you can be in a relationship or want anyone to make you feel good or fulfill you or even take the responsibility of having children, if you ask me. I mean, all those things shouldn't happen until it's kind of like in other cultures when you become a man or you become an adult, they go through an initiation, and every culture has its own form of that, whatever it may be. I know this sounds crazy, but I saw a documentary one time where in the Amazon, these people, when these men are becoming adults, they put their hands in a basket full of ants that are fire ants, and then if they can withstand that, they become adults. And obviously, that might seem crazy or it's different, but the point being that is like they're initiating them into adulthood. And I would say in our culture, we should do the same. Become initiated into adulthood. We should look at some form of childhood trauma, and we should look at our issues how we were raised in our childhood and how they affect us now. And I would say that would be a great way to initiate our children, but we don't have anything like that in our culture.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, I will have to say though, if I had to stick my hands in a basket of ants, that I may want to just be an adult child. I'll throw a couple temper
But the
tantrums.
point, the point being with that story is though that they did have an initiation to become an adult,
Right.
like
Well,
just go from
even
child to
go ahead.
adult. But in our is none of that. You kind of go to college, and in college you're just partying and kind of having fun, and it's kind of like an extension of high school. And then you get a job, and then you maybe, but there's no like real age where you kind of become this adult. I kind of, in my personal opinion, that I feel maybe more so in the early part of our early 1900s. But I would say in the modern time, we've kind of lost that ability.
Well, I think the American Indians too, didn't they have to do something that the go for
Yeah,
the walk or whatever, and the right?
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Any culture like that, who's in that tight knit type of group has to do that because they're not the population of our size, and they have to weed out who's strong and who has what abilities and
And I don't advocate, religion. I don't mean in a negative way. I don't personally advocate, the Catholic Church, but they at least have, when you're getting married, if you were going to get married through the church, you're supposed to have. I forget what it's called.
yeah, I know what you mean. It's really counseling.
Yeah, the counseling thing. I don't think they probably hit on the issues that we're talking about, but I mean, at least there's, I think that is a good thing in a way. And I agree with you 100% with having children. I mean, like, I don't even think, I know we're getting older. We see things a little bit different perspective. You're 25, like, oh, I have a baby, but like, you don't realize how serious it is to have a child, care for a child, be emotionally stable yourself enough to deal with, the levels of where the child's going to be and be able to meet them where they are without, judgment and anger and your own reactions. So it's, it's pretty interesting.
It is interesting, and I would say that it really takes a lot of effort, time, meditation, and self-awareness to really want to heal those traumas and to move on. But I would say that without doing it, you'll never be fully happy and a fully satisfied person. You'll just be searching for another fix or another pleasure or another thing to distract you. I know myself and a lot of people, we kind of run from our traumas. I think we've all experienced that. And at some point in our life, we all need to say enough is enough and stop putting ourselves in bad situations and finally take that time. And I think one of the major issues to doing that is that, we're constantly working. We live in an environment where, you can't make enough money anymore to support your family or, in the economy that they are in today. And so, who has maybe, for example, money to go to counseling, which is $125 a session, or just to take a year off and really just, read books, go on YouTube, get some free lectures, and really take the time to, analyze themselves. I don't think anybody would say, oh, I don't have a year and a half. I don't have, but, you need time. It's not like you're going to heal your trauma and watch one video on YouTube or do it in a week. It's something that, you're just going to have to put effort into it if you want to really, be
Right.
successful.
And give yourself space to do it. I mean, like I mean, obviously if you have kids, you can't just stop taking care of your
No.
kids, but you have to make some sort of allotment of time. And on top of it, I think another thing is the idea that people probably feel it's a sign of weakness to even like, oh, childhood trauma. I'm an adult now. I'm not, and it's like, we have to get past that stigmatism of feeling that, we're weak because of, but this is just the way the world is. You come up, like you say, and we're talking, you get to be 20, you don't even know anything yet, but all you do know is that you've been programmed. You don't even know it, but I'm saying you've just been programmed all that time. And now you're thrusted out into the world and, without the emotional capability and foundation to, be your best self.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're headed to as future generations is, as we get older, every generation changes. And I think the older generations were just suck it up, this is the way it is, like I had said earlier. But I think the new generations will be more open to that. And I think that these ideas are just starting to bud. And I think once you see another 2 or 3 generations, I think it'll be commonplace, to be honest with you. And I think it'll be something that'll be much more available, especially with the internet. I think there's great resources. If anybody's interested in just to dabble into childhood trauma, you can go on YouTube for free, and there's a gentleman named Jay Reed that you can look up, and Patrick Tanahan that we talked about, and they're both clinical psychologists that deal specifically with childhood trauma. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of great free videos on there, and you could start by watching one a day, and over 6 months to a year time, you'll be a whole different person. You'll start to assimilate that information in your subconscious. You'll start to recognize patterns that are unhealthy, and you'll start making the necessary changes that will affect not only you, but your family, your children, and your coworkers. So it has a really powerful effect, because not only once you change you change everyone that you come in contact with.
Yep. And obviously what you're putting out, like what you're saying, you change everybody you put in contact with, because what you put out is what emanates around. So yeah, it's with the energy you're giving to others. But I have to say, as far as Patrick is the one that I really watched, and yeah,
great.
And
I think A to Z. Thank you. Jay Reed is another great one. He deals more with if you were raised by narcissistic parents and how that affects you. And I think so if you're someone who had a very severe narcissistic parent, then his information really kind of is very specific in that. And I would say Patrick's takes you from A to Z on the whole childhood trauma scale. I think they're both great, and they both have their pluses and pros and cons. And I think you just should listen to both of them.
Yep.
And which is great. I mean, that's the great thing about our technology. That's one of the major reasons I come on here, is because I want to give out free information. I want this information to be available for everyone, and I want people to, be proactive and work on themselves. And I don't want money to be an issue. And that's the great time we're living in with the internet. And I'm glad that we can provide these resources.
Absolutely. And what's great about Patrick too, for those, if you're ever interested to check him out, is like he really utilizes his own experiences growing up, and like really how he even got to the position of doing what he's doing now, teaching, and as far as childhood trauma goes. So it's not like he's just somebody spouting off some stuff. He lived it, and went through his own demons, as it were, and now is out there helping and teaching other people to realize the same type of stuff, and to free themselves of all that nonsense and baggage that we carry. But so I mean, that's basically it. But I just I think for me, like the biggest takeaway of it, and like if you feel differently you can say, but for me the biggest takeaway of it is just realizing, because I realized when I started watching his stuff, as far as like, I know I've worked on different issues, but it's like, if I knew this ahead of time, it could have, it's almost like, again, going back to that center point of like, it all emanates kind of from there, and you can tackle one issue here, there, out and around. But if you start at that core and like understand your family dynamics and where you were in the family, and what scenarios played out that could lead you for certain things, you start to, even something as simple as like, especially me, I used to get crazy a lot of times, like, somebody cut me off or something, with the drive, and, and I realized that's just, where that comes from, as far as like, feeling that, somebody thinks they're gonna, like get over on me, or, or I'm not worthy, or you can't just walk on me, from things that I experienced. And I realized it has nothing to do, like, this person doesn't know me. They're just driving along the road, which I knew before, but, it's sometimes you feel like you're fighting yourself to not react to something that's coming up. But if you know where it's coming from, that feeling, then it doesn't make it as difficult to you're always going to react in a sense, because you're going to feel it, but you'll be able to deal with it. Where it's coming from, and has its space, and it doesn't, it's not like you're like, oh, I just got to stay calm. Like, you really understand where it comes from, and you can put it in a place, and it doesn't bother you.
Yeah, and I think a good point about this is that I would say too that like I know even my own issues that it doesn't go away. I think some of these childhood traumas, they stay with you for your lifetime,
Right.
and they're who you are. They're part of the your consciousness. There is some part in like in a computer system in your brain. They're still in a file. But what you do is you get better at having more awareness of them, and you get better at handling them and not letting them become reactive, like you said. So like when you're driving now, instead of just reacting, you have that little space, that kind of Eckhart Tolle thing of being in the now, being present. That reaction is that you have a tendency for that, so you're already kind of prefrontally cortex prepared for that when you're driving, in certain situations that you're going to react this way. So now you're prepared. And when it does come up and it does flare up, hopefully the goal is it becomes less and less intense. So from a scale of 1 to 10, instead of maybe in a 10, it's a 7 or a 6 or 5 or a 4 as you get older, but it'll still be there. I think that's the biggest thing to understand is, these things don't just go away. That's the problem. They're there forever, but you learn how to manage them,
Right.
and you learn not let them affect your relationship. So next time when, if your parents made you feel unworthy or less than, or you don't have a good self-esteem, you don't take that out on your husband or your wife. You realize, oh, this is, when he said this, or she said this, that had nothing to do with, has nothing to do with them. And for me to have resentment at them is unnecessary. And I don't have to be mad at them for 2 or 3 days or do these little spiteful things that we do to sabotage our relationships. I can realize that it's just, something that is my own issue, and I can just watch it come up, and I can take a deep breath and let it go.
Right, exactly. Not for nothing. It's like a baseball player. You could be the greatest hitter in the world, but you're still going to strike out once in a while, So it just is what it is. But still.
Ever totally heal. I think that's the biggest thing to understand is that these things are just something that you constantly work on, and such is life, right? I mean, always eating right isn't easy. Not every day do I get up and want to make a juice, or do I get up every day and want to exercise or do all my protocol that I do to stay well. But whether I want to or not, I make a conscious decision to do that.
Right. That's what it all comes down to. And I wonder, maybe that could be a topic for another time of like how to even get people to a space. I mean, I guess you can't even say that because everybody's on their own journey. And when the time is right for them to learn, they learn what they have to learn. But it would be a nice way because, it's hard to even imagine, like, how do you get someone to see, like, that space and that separation. But I mean, I guess, it just happens. I developed it my own way over my time. You did the same thing. So I guess it all just comes down to the individual.
A great way of trying to do that would be to ask your, not to say be religious, but if you are, that's great, whatever works for you. But I would ask for either a higher power or your spirit guides or, your angels or whatever you believe in. But I would ask for something higher to give you that space, and do that once a night, and then see what comes into your life. We can definitely manifest our health and our wealth and our healing. We just have to want it and then look for the signs. Even when someone passes away, sometimes we see a butterfly or we see a certain song that comes on.
Yep.
The signs are always there. We just have to be attuned and want to see them and slow down a little bit. And I would say that to create that space is a it's like exercise or anything. It's a practice. And, if you want to do that, I think over time anyone can and will develop it. You just have to set the intention to do that. And I think all the right circumstances will conspire to help you.
Absolutely. We're going to give her a little round of applause. That's a beautiful message. Beautiful message. We love sharing. We love sharing love here on Operation Status Quo.
Hey-o. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that, if you look at it from this perspective of that I look at it through mysticism or spirituality, there's only oneness, and so you are it, and so you can really manifest and accomplish anything you want, especially when it comes to healing, and so if you ask for it, your higher self, the higher you, the part of you that's in space and time will allow that to happen. So I mean, it's not really that complicated is what I'm saying. Sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be.
Yep.
But a lot of people don't really want the healing. They kind of just want to live in the moment and feel good. Everything in our culture is about feeling good and kind of running from our problems. Everything on TV is pushing us in that way, and everything in our society is pushing us that way. So that's the thing. You just have to really want it and really really have sincerity, because to do this kind of childhood trauma or fixing anything. Like the only problem is it's not fun. Sometimes it's not fun. The outcome is great, but it's like anything. You have to go through it. Sometimes you have to cry. Sometimes you have to go through pain. Sometimes you have to go through feeling uncomfortable. And I think people don't want to do that. They just, like I said, want to, let's go have a drink and go to a game, or let's just, go to the movies, or, let's anything just to run from feeling these emotions. Because sometimes in life, unfortunately, things aren't fun. And sometimes we have to do things on our own and do our own journey and go through the healing that, we don't want to feel. Because like I said, feeling, who wants to get up and cry that day, or feel this real like big thing of sadness that came out from 5 years old or 3 years old. I mean, the average person, right? We just don't want to feel that. I mean, and it makes sense because we want to protect ourselves from pain. But
should also feel good about it though, in a way, like, like I've had times where, things have come up, and even though it's like a sad, it's also really a happy moment too, because you're purging, you're realizing where it's coming from. It's really, I mean, I don't even look at it. I mean, I get it. Why you're saying why people would want to avoid it. Like everybody wants to avoid pain overall in any kind of way, or discomfort. But the truth is, like, it's really kind of a beautiful discomfort, It's like I don't feel like it's a retching discomfort,
I agree, but it just depends on the person. Some people feel that way and some people don't. I mean, but you look at some of the TV shows you see on TV where, like, I don't know, like the ones where they do like the housewives, or anything of those nature. It's always about, you see the people on there, they're always talking about each other. They're more concerned about the relationships, who's saying what, who's doing what, who's drinking. You said this to my, like, they're more concerned with nonsense.
Yeah, right.
Actions. And I feel like that's what's on our TV a lot, and that's what our kids are picking up. I mean, I think recently I just watching the MTV Awards, and as I get older now and I look at it, I go, oh my God, it's kind of really programmed for 12 to 25-year-olds, and man, this stuff on there is not asking you to purge anything and to feel better. I'll tell you that.
And it is crazy. Like, I mean, I did a show back, a couple of weeks or whatever ago when Jerry Springer passed away, because I always enjoyed, the show, but, I enjoy it from that perspective, but at the same time, like, what it promotes in a certain way. And, I mean, I used to remember watching it sometimes and thinking, like, everybody just comes on and say, but you did it. They're just screaming, you did. And I'm just thinking, from the way I live, it's like, I never think of, like, as soon as you start saying you did, but that's when you gotta, if you want to talk about finding space, as soon as you start saying you did this to me, or you made me feel, that's when you got to stop and say, wait a minute, I know it's coming from me. Let me figure out where that's coming from before I start. No, because you didn't do it. Something triggered in me. It's coming from me.
Right, but but unfortunately, just as a just like our psychology and how our brain protects us, it's really hard because we'll just automatically go to blame the other person. It's just the way. Like, it's just an instinct is what I would say. Yep. And so that's why, the main message I hope that, we're making clear is that, we really have to control that instinct and trying to explain it in a way that people understand what that looks like and feels like and what that, is in our culture.
Yeah. So I hope this information has been helpful. Mike, anything else, any other tidbits you think we missed that are important regarding this topic? Or I think we covered pretty good. Up to you.
Yeah. I would just encourage everyone to really, at one point in their life, really deal with this. I would say that everyone I've worked with people with cancer and fibromyalgia and every other illness I can think of, I would really say that this is it all kind of stems from this, and this is a large portion of people's problems. And I would say that take the time and space as you can slowly to integrate this information. We gave the resources that you can get on YouTube, you can Google stuff. I would just start familiarizing yourself with word and terminology, and I would just make this something in your life that is I would say imperative to your wellness, because the more you can learn this and implement it, the happier you will be. So
Yep.
Take it seriously and really give it some forethought and really put it out there to the universe that you want to heal, and you'll have miracles happen.
Absolutely. Excellent messages. And Mike's contact information is in the description box below. Personalized Wellness Solutions. You could feel free to contact him, and he can be your personal. I'm lucky. I got a personal health and wellness guru. You know what I'm saying? I can give him a call. Hey, Mike, my finger hurts. What am I thinking about today?
Don't worry. The check's in the mail.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sending you the check. I'm sending you. It got lost somewhere, but it's on its way.
Nail.
And one last thing, Mike's been working hard on the book, and it's moving through the process. And I know you don't have a release date yet, but it's working through and coming up. And we're really happy here on Operation Status Quo for Mike and the work he's doing in that book, which is going to be a fantastic resource for everything from A to Z for your health and wellness and creating abundance in your life. And we're going to have a big show. Book party on here once that finally comes to fruition. So glad to see that moving along and with the publishers and all that kind of stuff. So very happy for you on that, and it's great that you're working as hard as you do to try to share so many positive messages with the people out there. And I appreciate you taking the time to come here on my show and share your knowledge with my audience. Thank you so much.
Yep, and we'll make this a weekly or bi-weekly thing, and encourage people to come join us every week or two and listen to us, and we'll be as a group and a team, and we'll go on a wellness journey together.
That sounds wonderful. All right, round of applause for Mike. There he goes, Mike. Michael Palma, Personalized Wellness Solutions, right here on Operation Status Quo. All right, Mike, I'm going to let you go.
Yep, enjoy the rest of the day.
You do the same, and I'll talk to you later. Take it easy.
You got it.
All right, thanks. All right, bye-bye. All right, there he goes. All right, one more round of applause for Mike. Great job. Fantastic. Isn't that nice? Good positive messages, power, abundance. It all comes from you. You make. I'm sorry, my AO got in my way. You make the choices for yourself. You have that power, so it's okay. It could seem overwhelming at times, different facets of things, but just take it step by step. Whatever it is for you, you can overcome anything. You can live your best, most abundant, happy, healthy, vibrant life. We all deserve it. Now, we're not here to be, sitting in wheelchairs, hooked up to machines, and half dead at 50 years old. So you can make it happen for yourself and free yourself of all that guilt and shame and everything else that might be holding you back from not only being your best, but being able to help and give back to others as well, because that's what it's all about, All right. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me here today on Operation Status Quo. My name is Pete Palma. I thank you so much for your time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, send this out to your friends, your family, those you love, and of course, those you despise as well. Leave me comments in the comment section. Send me an email. You're welcome to be here and participate on the show as well. I would love to have you on. If you have whatever you'd like to share, I'm happy to do. So feel free to do that. I don't know if I said it already, but in case I didn't, I love you individually as well as a group, each and every one of you. You're all my favorite. You're my favorite. You're my favorite. You're my favorite. And you're my favorite. All right. Now, you're all my favorite. Seriously, though. All right. That's it then. Love you guys out there. God bless. Thanks for being here. Until tomorrow, Operation Status Quo disengaged.
Is a boulevard of 10 short blocks.